The huge space station floated in the darkness between the stars. Its metal wall stretched for miles in every direction. Bright lights twinkled along its surface like tiny stars. This was Station Nexus Prime, the biggest meeting place in the galaxy. Today it was full of aliens from every corner of space. Inside the station's main room, creatures from dozens of worlds sat in special seats. The room was so big that a person could walk for an hour and still not reach the other side. High above, a clear dome showed the black space outside and the distant stars that looked like diamonds scattered on dark cloth. The Zephyrians floated, in glass bubbles filled with their special air. They looked like living crystals that sang when they moved. Their voices made beautiful music that could be heard through the translation machines. These beings came from a world made entirely of crystal caves, and their ships were just as beautiful as they were. Near them sat the Kron, huge creatures that looked like they were made for war. Their bodies were covered in thick armor that seemed to be alive. When they moved, their armor moved with them like a second skin. Their ships were the same way, made of living metal that could heal itself when it got hurt. The Kron had been the strongest fighters in space for 300 years. On the other side of the room, the Velani sat in chairs that seemed to be made of light itself. These aliens were tall and thin, and they glowed with a soft blue light. Sometimes they would disappear for a moment and then come back, like ghosts that could choose when to be real. Their ships could do the same thing, appearing and disappearing, at will. Admiral Jake Morrison stood with the human group, watching all of this with calm eyes. He was an older man with gray hair and lines on his face that came from years of making hard choices. His uniform was plain and simple compared to the fancy clothes the other aliens wore. Next to him, Captain Lisa Hayes held a small computer, tablet, reading the latest reports from Earth. The humans had been invited to this big meeting, but everyone knew they were only here to be polite. The other races thought of humans as babies who had just learned to walk among the stars. Earth had only been able to travel faster than light for 50 years, which was nothing compared to the thousands of years the other races had been exploring space. For weeks, the aliens had been showing off their amazing ships and weapons. The Zephyrians had ships that could sing enemy vessels apart with sound waves. The Kron had weapons that could eat through any armor like acid through paper. The Velani had developed guns that could shoot backwards through time and hit targets before the trigger was even pulled. Ambassador Helen Carter sat in the front row of the human section. She was a smart woman who had spent her whole life talking to aliens and learning their ways. She knew what they all thought about human technology. To them, Earth's ships were just big chunks of metal held together with bolts and hope. Human weapons were simple guns that shot metal bullets, nothing fancy or special. Commander Ryan Blake stood near a window, looking out at the space around the station. Somewhere out there, hidden behind a large planet, the human fleet was waiting. He had sent them the signal hours ago, and they should be getting ready to move. Blake was a young officer, but he had fought in more battles than many of the older aliens in the room. The alien leaders were talking among themselves, sharing stories of their great victories and powerful weapons. They spoke of battles where entire planets had been destroyed with single shots and wars that had been won without any of their people getting hurt. Their voices were full of pride and confidence. Captain Danny Walsh was already in his ship, far from the station. The USS Defiance was 50 years old, which made it ancient by human standards but brand new compared to the 1,000-year-old alien vessels. The ship's metal hull was scarred from many battles, and its engines made noise that the aliens would think was broken. But Walsh knew his ship like he knew his own heartbeat. Every scratch and dent had a story, and every system had been tested in real combat. The other human captains were also getting ready. Captain Betty Foster commanded the USS Ranger, a ship that had fought in humanity's first war with aliens. Captain Steve Cooper was in charge of the USS Guardian, a vessel that had saved more human colonies than any other ship in the fleet. Back in the station, the alien representatives continued their show. A Kron general stood up and began telling everyone about his newest weapon, something that could turn enemy ships inside out. The crowd listened with interest, making impressed sounds at all the right moments. The Velani leader talked about her ship that existed in 7 different dimensions at once, making it impossible to hit. The Zephyrian speaker sang about crystal, weapons that could make reality itself sing apart. Admiral Morrison listened to all of this without saying a word. He had heard it all before, in reports from human spies and diplomats who had been watching these races for decades. The aliens were very good at making impressive speeches about their wonderful technology. But Morrison knew something they didn't know. He knew that the best weapon in any fight wasn't the fanciest gun or the strongest armor. It was the person using them. Captain Hayes checked her tablet one more time. The message from Commander Blake was clear and simple. The human fleet was in position and ready to move. All they needed was the word from Admiral Morrison, and the galaxy would see what human ships could really do. The alien leaders were still talking, still showing off, still thinking that humans were too weak and stupid to be any real threat. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The huge Kron warrior stood up from his seat, making the floor shake under his weight. War Prince Vextar was bigger than 3 humans put together, and his living armor made him look even more frightening. His voice was so deep that it made the walls vibrate when he spoke. "Honored Council," he said, his words coming out like rocks falling down a mountain. "Why do we waste our time with such simple displays? These metal boxes cannot fight against the real warriors of our time." The other aliens in the room started talking among themselves, agreeing with what the Kron had said. They looked at the human section with expressions that showed they thought humans were just children playing with toys. The Velani High Commander Thessarian nodded her glowing head. Her people had ships that could become invisible by stepping out of normal space. No one had ever found a way to fight something they could not see or touch. The voice of the Zephyrian collective made sounds like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Through the translation machines, everyone heard its agreement. The Zephyrians had weapons that could break things apart just by singing at them. Their crystal ships could make sounds that would turn solid metal into dust. Admiral Morrison stepped forward into the center of the big room. Every eye turned to look at him. He was just a human, smaller and weaker than most of the aliens around him, but he walked like a man who had never backed down from a fight. His voice was calm and steady when he spoke. "War Prince Vextar makes a good point," Morrison said. "Maybe a real test would teach us all more than just looking at pretty ships." Captain Hayes almost smiled as she watched the alien leaders look at each other with surprise. They had not expected the humans to suggest a real fight. The aliens were used to showing off their ships and weapons, but they rarely had to prove that they actually worked against real enemies. The Council Arbiter was a very old being whose people had been keeping peace in the galaxy for thousands of years. No one knew exactly what the Arbiter looked like under its dark robes, but its voice appeared directly in everyone's mind when it spoke. "Admiral Morrison," the Arbiter said without moving its lips, "are you asking for a battle between our ships?" Morrison nodded. "A simple test of fighting skills. 3 of your best ships against 3 of ours. We can use safe weapons that will not really hurt anyone. The winner will be whoever can hit their targets and avoid getting hit themselves." Commander Blake was already thinking about which ships to choose. He knew that the USS Defiance would have to lead the fight. Captain Walsh was the best pilot in the human fleet, and his ship had been in more battles than any other. The USS Ranger under Captain Foster would be good support, and the USS Guardian with Captain Cooper had the best defensive systems. All 3 ships were old by human standards, but they had been improved and fixed so many times that they were actually better than when they were first built. Every part had been tested in real combat, and every system had been rebuilt to work perfectly. War Prince Vextar laughed, and the sound was like 2 mountains crashing together. "This will be over very quickly," he said. He chose his newest ship, the Flesh Render, which was grown rather than built. The ship could heal itself from any damage and change its shape to become a better fighter. Along with it, he picked 2 smaller ships that pulsed with living energy. The Velani commander selected her phase ship called the Whisper of Eternity. This ship could step out of normal space and appear anywhere it wanted, making it impossible for enemies to predict where it would attack from. The Zephyrians chose their crystal destroyer, the Harmonic Devastation, which could sing enemy ships apart with deadly music. As the 2 groups of ships moved to their fighting positions, the aliens in the station started making bets on who would win. Most of them thought the humans would lose in less than a minute. Some said the human ships would be destroyed so quickly that they would not even have time to fire their weapons. The alien ships were amazing to look at. The Kron vessels moved like living things, their hulls changing shape as they flew. The Veilani ship flickered in and out of sight like a ghost. The Zephyrian ship glowed with inner light and made beautiful sounds as it moved through space. Captain Walsh started the first part of the human plan. The USS Defiance began sending out radio signals on many different frequencies at the same time. To the aliens watching, it looked like the humans were just making random noise because their communication systems were too simple to work properly. Commander Blake smiled as he watched the enemy ships take their positions. The aliens were doing exactly what humans had expected them to do. The Kron ship spread out to surround the humans and attack from all sides. The Veilani ship got ready to disappear and attack from behind. The Zephyrian ship began charging its sound weapons for a powerful first strike. What the aliens did not know was that the human radio noise was actually a very smart way of sharing information. Every human ship was talking to every other human ship at the same time. They were sharing target information, tracking where the enemy ships were going, and guessing what the aliens would do next. The humans had been watching and studying these alien races for many years. They knew how each species liked to fight, what their strengths and weaknesses were, and how to use that knowledge to win battles. Captain Foster moved the USS Ranger into what looked like a defensive position, trying to protect the other human ships. Captain Cooper positioned the USS Guardian where it looked like an easy target. The alien commanders saw exactly what they wanted to see, which was humans making the same mistakes that weak species always made. The battle was about to begin, and neither side knew that they were about to learn something very important about the other. The fighting area cleared as both groups of ships moved into their starting positions. The alien ships looked like they came from a dream or a nightmare. The Kron vessels were alive, their hulls moving and changing like the skin of some giant beast. Tubes and veins could be seen under their surface, pumping energy through their living bodies. The Veilani phase ship flickered like a candle in the wind. One moment it was there, solid and real, and the next moment it was barely visible, like looking at something through thick fog. The ship seemed to exist in several places at once, making it impossible to tell where it really was. The Zephyrian crystal ship was the most beautiful of all. It looked like it was carved from a single giant diamond, and light danced through its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The ship hummed with a sound that could be felt in the bones of anyone who heard it. Captain Walsh started the first part of the human battle plan. The USS Defiance began sending out signals on every radio frequency it could reach. The ship's communication equipment worked harder than it ever had before, filling space with what sounded like electronic noise and random chatter. The alien commanders listened to this noise and shook their heads. To them, it proved that human technology was crude and simple. They thought the humans were trying to coordinate their ships but did not have good enough equipment to do it properly. The aliens felt even more confident that this battle would be easy. Commander Blake watched the enemy ships take their positions and smiled. The aliens were doing exactly what humans had predicted they would do. For thousands of years, these races had fought the same way, using the same tactics that had worked against other aliens. They never thought that someone might have studied their methods and found ways to beat them. The Kron ships moved to surround the human vessels, planning to attack from all directions at once. This was their favorite way to fight because their living ships could heal any damage while overwhelming their enemies with superior numbers and firepower. The Veilani ship prepared to phase out of normal space and appear behind the human ships where their armor was weakest. This surprise attack had worked against every enemy they had ever faced. No one had ever found a way to predict where a phase ship would appear. The Zephyrian vessel began building up energy for its harmonic weapons. These sound-based guns could break apart the molecular bonds that held matter together, turning solid ships into clouds of dust in seconds. What none of the aliens realized was that the human radio noise was actually a very advanced way of sharing information. Every human ship was connected to every other human ship through a network that updated hundreds of times per second. They were sharing targeting data, enemy movement patterns, and battle predictions all at the same time. Captain Foster moved the USS Ranger into position, but not where it appeared to be going. The ship looked like it was taking a defensive stance, but it was actually moving to a spot where it would have the best angle to attack when the time came. Captain Cooper positioned the USS Guardian where it looked like easy prey. The ship appeared to be isolated and vulnerable, exactly the kind of target that would attract enemy attention. But Cooper had chosen his position very carefully, and his ship was ready for what was coming. The Kron flesh render attacked first, launching balls of living plasma that burned through space like tiny suns. These weapons were designed to overwhelm any energy shield system that had ever been built. The alien commander expected to see the human ship destroyed in the first few seconds of the fight. But the USS Defiance did not use energy shields at all. Instead, its armor was made of layers of different metals and ceramics, each one designed to absorb and spread out the heat and energy of incoming attacks. The ship shook and groaned as the plasma hit, but the armor held. Pieces of the outer layer burned away, but the ship kept flying and fighting. The Veilani Whisper of Eternity phased out of normal space and reappeared behind the USS Guardian, just as Captain Cooper had known it would. The alien ship appeared exactly where human intelligence reports had said it would, in the perfect position to attack the engines and rear armor of the human vessel. But instead of finding a helpless target, the alien ship found itself looking at a spread of metal projectiles that had been fired from hidden launchers the moment it started to phase back into normal space. The human ship had been waiting for this exact moment, and Captain Cooper had timed his counterattack perfectly. The Zephyrian harmonic devastation began its deadly song, sending sound waves through space that should have torn the USS Ranger apart at the atomic level. But Captain Foster had already moved her ship out of the path of the attack, following a course that had been calculated by all three human ships working together. The crystal ship's weapon found only empty space where its target had been a moment before. The aliens had never fought an enemy that could predict their attacks and move out of the way before the weapons were even fired. War Prince Vextar stared at his displays in confusion. His bioplasma weapons were hitting the human ship again and again, but somehow it was still fighting. The living armor of his own ship was trying to adapt to the human weapons, but there was nothing to adapt to. The humans were using simple metal bullets fired at very high speed, weapons so basic that his advanced systems had never been programmed to defend against them. The alien spectators in the station watched in shocked silence as their most advanced warship struggled against the primitive human vessels. Something was very wrong with what they were seeing, but they could not understand what it was. The alien watchers in the station became very quiet as they looked at the battle displays. Something impossible was happening before their eyes. The simple human ships were not just surviving against their most advanced warships, they were actually winning. The Kron flesh render was trying to heal its wounds, but the USS Defiance kept shooting the same spots over and over again. Every time the living ship tried to grow new armor, human bullets would tear it away. The bioship had never faced an enemy that could shoot so fast and so accurately for such a long time. War Prince Vextar roared in anger as damage reports flooded his command center. His ship was designed to adapt to any enemy weapon by growing stronger armor or changing its shape. But the humans were not using energy weapons or exotic technology. They were using chunks of metal fired at incredible speed, and his ship had no way to adapt to something so simple and brutal. The Veilani commander faced the same problem with her phase ship. The Whisper of Eternity could step out of normal space to avoid energy beams and particle weapons, but the human kinetic rounds existed only in the real world. When her ship phased back into normal space, the metal bullets were still there waiting for it. Captain Hayes watched the battle from the observation deck of the station, her tablet showing feeds from all the human ships. The aliens were learning what humanity's enemies had discovered the hard way over the years. Human military thinking was not about having the best technology, but about using whatever technology they had in the smartest way possible. Commander Blake gave the order for the second phase of the attack. The three human ships moved together, like they were parts of a single machine. Their movements looked random and chaotic to the alien observers, but they were actually following patterns that had been developed through hundreds of years of fighting against enemies with better weapons and stronger ships. The USS Guardian launched what looked like simple missiles toward the Zephyrian crystal ship. The harmonic devastation easily destroyed the incoming weapons with its defensive sound waves, just as Captain Cooper had known it would. But when the missiles exploded, they released clouds of tiny metal pieces that spread through space like a fog. The metal particles interfered with the crystal ship's harmonic resonance, making it impossible for the Zephyrian vessel to focus its sound weapons properly. Suddenly, the ship that had been able to sing other vessels apart was blind and deaf to its enemies' exact positions. Captain Foster saw her chance and brought the USS Ranger in close to the confused alien ship. Her vessel's point defense systems had been designed to shoot down incoming missiles and projectiles, but they worked just as well against the crystal formations that powered the Zephyrian weapons. Laser beams that were meant to stop enemy missiles began targeting the delicate crystal arrays on the alien ship's hull. Each hit sent cracks running through the beautiful crystalline structure, and the harmonic weapons began to fail one by one. The Kron Flesh Render made a desperate move, trying to ram the USS Defiance with its massive bulk. The bioship reconfigured itself into a giant spear shape, intending to punch through the human vessel's armor and destroy it from the inside. This tactic had worked against countless enemies in the past, but Captain Walsh had been expecting this attack. The human ship rolled away at exactly the right moment, letting the alien vessel's momentum carry it past where the Defiance had been. As the Kron ship flew by, it found itself directly in the path of a spread of kinetic rounds that had been fired by the USS Guardian. The living ship's armor, already weakened by constant bombardment from the Defiance, could not absorb this new attack. Holes appeared in its hull, and biofluid began leaking into space like green blood from a wounded animal. The Veilani Whisper of Eternity tried a new strategy, phasing rapidly in and out of normal space to confuse the human targeting systems. The ship appeared and disappeared dozens of times in a few seconds, hoping to find a moment when it could attack without being hit in return. But the human ships were sharing information faster than the alien could phase. Every time the Whisper of Eternity appeared, all three human vessels knew exactly where it was and where it was likely to appear next. The alien ship found itself walking into a trap every time it tried to attack. Captain Cooper coordinated with the other human commanders, and they began firing at spots where the alien ship had not appeared yet. When the Whisper of Eternity phased back into normal space, it found kinetic rounds already waiting for it in every direction. The alien spectators could not believe what they were seeing. The most advanced warships in the galaxy were being destroyed by weapons that were thousands of years old. Energy shields that could stop planet-killing lasers were useless against simple metal bullets. Phase technology that made ships impossible to hit was being countered by basic prediction and teamwork. War Prince Vextar finally understood what was happening, but it was too late. His people had become so focused on making better and better technology that they had forgotten how to fight enemies who did not follow the rules. The humans were not trying to match alien technology. Instead, they were using the aliens' advanced systems against them. The Kron had made their ships so complex that they could not be repaired in battle. The Veilani had made their phase technology so sophisticated that it followed predictable patterns. The Zephyrians had made their harmonic weapons so precise that they could be disrupted by simple interference. The humans had spent centuries fighting wars with whatever weapons they could find. They had learned to be flexible, to adapt, and to never give up even when facing impossible odds. While the aliens had been perfecting their technology, humans had been perfecting the art of war itself. The battle ended with all three alien ships showing critical damage on their sensors. The USS Defiance, USS Ranger, and USS Guardian were still ready to fight, even though they had taken many hits during the battle. The silence in the station's great hall lasted for a very long time as everyone tried to understand what they had just seen. Admiral Morrison stood calmly as the battle results appeared on the big screens around the room. The human victory was not luck or an accident. It had been a complete defeat of supposedly better technology by using better tactics, teamwork, and the ability to adapt to any situation. War Prince Vextar was the first to speak, but his voice was full of confusion instead of anger. Your weapons are thousands of years old. How did you defeat ships that were built with the most advanced technology in the galaxy? Captain Hayes answered with a simple truth. Because our weapons work. While you were making perfect energy shields, we were learning how to put metal bullets exactly where we wanted them. While you were developing phase technology, we were studying how to predict where you would appear. The Veilani High Commander became fully solid in normal space, her ghostly beauty unable to hide how shocked she was. But your ships are so basic. No quantum computers, no bioneural networks, no dimensional manipulation systems. Commander Blake stepped forward to explain. Every system on our ships can be fixed with simple tools by any member of our crew. Every weapon can be built in any factory. Every tactic can be changed by field commanders without waiting for orders from headquarters. The Council Arbiter's ancient mind slowly processed what it had witnessed during the battle. You deliberately kept using older technology instead of advancing. Admiral Morrison corrected this misunderstanding. We improved our technology, but we did not abandon what worked. Those ships you call outdated have been made better through constant combat experience. Every battle taught us something new. Every defeat made us stronger. While other species reached the peak of technological development, we kept fighting wars and learning from them. Captain Walsh's voice carried across the amphitheater as he delivered the most important truth of all. You have all become so advanced that you forgot the basic principles of warfare. You depend on your technology to win battles for you. But technology can fail, be countered, or become obsolete. Human determination, adaptability, and refusal to give up never goes out of style. The exhibition ended with a completely new understanding. Among all the galactic races, the humans were not primitive or backward. They were practical and smart. Their ships were not outdated pieces of junk. They were proven designs that had been tested in real combat. Their military was not weak or inferior. It had been greatly underestimated by everyone. As the alien fleets prepared to leave the station, many of their commanders carried with them a new respect for the species that had dominated the battle, not through having better technology, but through having better determination and experience. The day humans showed their so-called outdated ships would be remembered as the day the galaxy learned that sometimes older methods are better, simpler designs are stronger, and experience is more valuable than innovation. In the weeks and months that followed, something unexpected happened throughout the galaxy. Human military advisors found themselves being asked to help by species that had once dismissed Earth's way of fighting. Races that had laughed at human combat methods began adding human tactics to their own battle strategies. The irony was not lost on Admiral Morrison. By trying to prove how much better they were than humans, the aliens had instead proven humanity's greatest strength. Humans had the ability to win against any odds using whatever tools were available to them. The Kron began training their warriors to fight without depending so much on their bio-ship's automatic systems. The Veilani learned to make their phase attacks less predictable by adding random elements. The Zephyrians developed backup weapon systems that did not rely on perfect harmonic resonance, but the biggest change was in how the galaxy viewed warfare itself. For thousands of years, military advancement had meant building more complex weapons and more sophisticated defenses. The human victory showed that complexity could be a weakness when facing an enemy who understood how to exploit it. Human shipyards, which had been considered primitive workshops by galactic standards, suddenly became places of great interest. Alien engineers came to study how humans built ships that could be repaired in the field with basic tools. They wanted to learn how to make weapons that would work reliably under any conditions. The humans shared their knowledge freely, understanding that a more stable galaxy was better for everyone. They taught other species about the importance of logistics, the value of standardized equipment, and the need for flexible tactics that could be adapted to any situation. Captain Hayes often thought about that day during her later career. The battle had lasted less than an hour, but it had changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Not because humans had conquered anyone, but because they had shown a better way to approach the problems of war and conflict. The stars still belonged to many different species, each with their own territories and cultures, but they were now guided by principles that humans had learned through centuries of fighting against impossible odds. The galaxy had learned that the best weapon was not the most advanced one, but the one that worked when everything else failed, and, in the end, That was the most human lesson of all. When faced with superior enemies and impossible situations, humans did not give up or surrender. They found a way to win with whatever they had, and they never stopped trying to get better at it. The day humans unveiled their outdated ships had become the day the galaxy learned to respect the power of experience, determination, and refusing to accept defeat.